Can I please request that when councillors and members of the public are speaking, not to disclose any personal information of an individual, as this might infringe the rights of that individual and breach data protection rules. This is a formal town council meeting and will be held using the agenda as published. Members of the public will be given the opportunity to speak during public open sessions, but will not be permitted to speak at other times. And when you're not speaking, will you please mute your microphone to help eliminate background noise? Thank you very much. So I'm on to the agenda now, and apologies for absence, we have none. Do we have any declarations of interest? Councillor Strawn.
Yes, a non-pecuniary interest in item 14B.
Thank you. Any other declarations of interest, please? Okay, I'll move on to Town Mayor's announcements. And yesterday I attended a Network Rail update meeting about accessibility for the station. We were informed that the project is on track and that they are still looking at possibilities for shortening the process so that we get our access earlier than winter 2022. There'll be a consultation with stakeholders before the end of the year when the more detailed design is available. And the next meeting of the Rail Access Group will be in January. GTR said that a feasibility study is underway for providing toilet facilities on the
Yes, shut up.
Sorry. A feasibility study is underway for providing toilet facilities on the station, and that there will be some improvements to the front of the station fairly shortly. And GTR are also concerned that passenger numbers are currently between 20 and 25% of normal, and they may well reduce again in the coming weeks. Central Bedfordshire gave a presentation on the transport interchange and how it links with the station access. I registered my concern that the plans had not been presented to the Town Council, even though CBC hoped to go to planning by the end of the year. I was promised a presentation shortly. There are constraints on the amount of land available for the interchange, but I raised concerns over what is planned in that there will be 3 bus stops, an increase of 2 since the existing one will go. And there doesn't appear to be provision for buses to stand between trips. And since there are 5 stops at Century House currently, I can't see at the moment that the interchange will allow us to remove buses from the Market Square, which we wanted to do, except for picking up and putting down. The positives of the plan are electronic signage showing both bus and train information in real time, together with CCTV and improved lighting to the station forecourt area. On a different subject, there were travellers starting to camp on the Dan Alban car park yesterday morning, and by the middle of this afternoon, the travellers had been encouraged to move on. And I think this is great, and I'd like to thank publicly the officers who dealt with that issue. Thank you very much. Right, I'm now moving on to the public open session. So I need just a moment to find the, the participants and the attendees. Right, I can now see the members of the public. Would any members of the public wish to speak? And I'll remind you that it's the same rules as normal. Each speaker will be allowed 1 3-minute slot, and there'll be a warning after 2.5 minutes. We have 8 members of the public joined us. Does anybody wish to speak, please? You have to use your electronic hand because the councillors can't see members of the public, simply their names. Nobody's indicating at all, so I will move on from the public open session. We don't have an invited speaker. Do we have any members' questions, please, colleagues? No members' questions. Okay, I'm moving on again. We're on with the minutes of the last meeting. So I'll go through them as usual for accuracy first. Anything on page 1, please? Page 2. Page 3. Councillor Pullinger.
Thank you,
Yes,
Madam Mayor. Item 8C, just to say that it's not a zebra crossing, so should change the word zebra to either pelican or pedestrian.
It is a pelican crossing, is it?
I believe so. I don't think
Light controlled. Is it
it's like told. I believe it is a pelican crossing, but pedestrian would have the same effect.
Okay, we'll change it to pedestrian. Anything else on page 3, please? Councillor Fage.
Yes.
Leslie Fage. Yeah.
So it says nursery close and Stratton Way. The word school shouldn't be there, I don't think. I think it should read and Stratton Way during school hours.
Yes, during Stratton Way, school shouldn't be there.
Are you with me on that? Because it's
Yeah.
not necessarily just closing time and school hours, and we've got an extra school in there. Does that read better or correct now?
I think it is correct to say at the entrance to Nursery Close and Stratton Way during school hours. Or no, actually, it's during closing time. It's when parents are picking up children. I'm getting my brain in gear now. So it's concerns about parking at the entrance to Nursery Close and Stratton.
Yeah, morning.
During school closing time. Because they don't have to wait if they're dropping off, they just drop off and go.
And picking up in the morning.
Picking up.
Okay.
Okay.
They're around Stratton Way when they drop the students off, just for visibility, getting in and out onto Potton Road. So that's why I thought school hours would be more appropriate than just the closing time. I agree, they wait longer at the closing time, but they do drop off and it does take a while. They do build up there in the mornings as well.
So shall we say at the beginning and the end of the school day? Because that's what we're referring to.
Yes, that's fine, thank you.
We got there in the end,
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we're saying at the entrance to Nursery Close and Stratton Way at the beginning and end of the school day. Is everybody happy with that, please? Yeah, thank you very much. Anything else on page 3, please? Page 4?
Yes.
Councillor Grant Fage, yes.
So item 9F, land north of Biggleswade. So this is referring to the development brief, which for some reason came back onto the agenda, despite nothing having changed. Just my concern is that the minute reads, that extract is actually from the objection that we put into the outline application, therefore isn't relevant to the development brief. So I actually think we can lose all of the wording from councillors consider the draft letter all the way down to deliberately misleading. It's not really required in the minutes, and it just makes them inaccurate because that's not referring to the development brief. So all of that can just be removed, and I think otherwise the minute is fine.
Are colleagues happy with removing that from the minutes? Is the clerk happy as well?
That's fine, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
What was agreed was just to refer back to our original objection. I know that's what we've written in the minutes previously, so maybe we could just include that as well, rather than referring to the exact wording. Appreciate there's been a lot of correspondence on this, so it can get a bit tricky.
Sorry, what was that last point you made, Councillor Fage?
Sorry, it was just that
added.
That's okay. No, the point that I added was just that we could refer them back to our previous objection, which is what we agreed at the meeting and what we've done in the past as well. So we can just write that in the minutes, much easier than what we have.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I'm not trying to be difficult.
Thank you very much. Anything else on page 4? Page 5? Or page 6? Okay, I'm now going to go through for matters arising. So matters arising on page 1, page 2,
Yes.
I think Councillor Pullinger had a matter arising.
I'm sorry, drop from page 1, Councillor.
Actually, Madam Mayor, it was referring to the accuracy. Are we considering the minutes from the exempt session now as well from the last meeting?
We should be, and I have to admit, as chairman of the meeting, I haven't got a copy of the exempt minutes in front of me, and I'm sorry about that. That's my failure. So are there any comments about accuracy on the exempt minutes? No? So I should go back and say, are we happy to approve both sets of minutes? Can I have your approval, please?
Move it.
Yes, can you show if you approve? Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll now go back to matters arising, and I'm sorry about that. So any matters arising on page 2, it was Councillor Knight, wasn't it?
Yes, please. Could I request an update on item 8A, please? The introduction of the new parking orders. Thanks.
Have we heard anything further from Central Beds, or is it a chasing thing again?
We have not, no. We'll have to do more chasing, I'm afraid, no.
Okay, thank you. Any more matters arising on page 2? Page 3? Page 4? Page 5? And page 6? Okay, I'm not getting any indications. So I'm going back to the agenda and planning applications. The first planning application is 5 Cedar Avenue, replacement of existing carport with an infill extension. Comments, please, colleagues.
Move no objection. No objection, subject to neighbours and our usual wording.
Thank you. Councillor Pullinger?
Second that.
Okay, thank you. Are we all happy with subject to neighbours?
Yes.
Thank you very much. 12 Popal Road, 2-storey side extension and garage conversion. Councillor Pullinger?
Move no objection, subject to neighbours.
Are we all happy with that? Yes?
No, I'm not.
Oh, sorry, Councillor
And
Fay.
this is going from a 2-bed to a 4-bed potential. They're losing a garage. They've got 1 car parking space. They say they've got another. There's quite a lot of parking there. They can't park on the road because the house is not on the road. It's set back from the road. So I would personally call that overdevelopment or and lack of parking.
Okay,
So I do object to it,
thank you.
I'm afraid.
Councillor Pullinger, you moved no objection, but I don't think I had a seconder. So, but I have to take Councillor Pullinger first. Does anybody second the no objection at this stage? No. Okay. Councillor Grantfage and then Councillor Foster.
Yeah, I'd like to second the objection. I've had a look at this. It's a road where there's not a huge amount of parking, and this is a coach house, which looks, the designs are not terribly, it's not terribly clear how many bedrooms they're going to. But this is a quite a large sort of triangular extension on the side of the house. Doesn't look to be losing a parking space other than the garage, but if they are losing the garage, which could be considered a parking space, and they're extending the size of the house and potentially with only 1 other parking space, I think that would put pressure on parking for other residents, and I do think it's overdevelopment as well. It's a bit of a bizarre extension, to be perfectly honest. Not that those are planning grounds, but I do think there are grounds for objection on this, unfortunately.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Foster.
I'm not sure I agree. I think I actually put my hand up to support the no objection. So
Sorry.
I would happily not object to this application, but I appreciate others feel differently.
Okay. So where I am at the moment is I've got a proposal for an objection on the grounds of excuse me, on the grounds of overdevelopment and the lack of off-street parking. Does anybody else wish to speak? Or can I take a vote? Oh, sorry, Councillor Pullinger.
I'd just like to ask if we can have the clerk's advice. If Councillor Foster intended to second my proposal and it was missed by the chair, which is understandable in an online meeting, what should the course of action be?
Yeah, I think we need some clarity on the vote. I don't think it's an honest mistake, isn't it? In that sense, yeah.
Oh, I accept that. It's just if that had been noticed, the vote would be on my
You're
proposal,
right.
the second proposal. So
Yeah.
I'm asking your advice which way we should do it, not saying it should be one or the other.
Yeah.
I think Councillor Foster's hand did actually go up before mine went up to try to second the objection. So I actually think perhaps the vote on Councillor Pullinger's motion first, and if that falls, then the objection.
Okay, I don't mind which way I take it. We'll see what the view of the meeting is. So what we're voting on now is no objection, subject to neighbours. All those in favour, please. That's 4. All those against? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that falls. So I've now got another proposal on the table. So the proposal now is to object on the grounds of overdevelopment and the lack of off-street parking. All those in favour of objecting on those grounds, please. That's 9. All those against? 2, 3. Okay. So we're objecting on the grounds of overdevelopment and lack of off-street parking. And now I'll try and keep my eyes more skint for proposers and seconders. So item C on 9 is 1 Milestones, proposed single-storey rear extension and the erection of a 1.8 metre high fence with double gates. Comments, please. Councillor Grant-Fage.
Yeah, was I missing something? But I could not see anywhere on this application any detail on what those gates look like. If colleagues managed to spot that in the documents, but I didn't, then happy to listen. But I can see that there, and I'm a little bit concerned. We're asked to come to a position on something that we don't have any visibility of, but reserve the right to be wrong if others did.
Okay, I've got Councillor Leslie Fage and then Councillor Ramsey, please.
So with regards, they've got parking there that's not I guess it's allocated, it's just not numbered up to the houses there. So there's like a car park behind the secure gates. They want to, number 1 Milestone seems to want to put a boundary around their car park, and they are putting gates that will open inwards onto their garden. So providing there's still space for the other cars and no one's in objection to it to the neighbours, it should be all right. Basically, they're putting a fence up to extend their garden but include their car parking area. Does that make some form of clarity? At the moment, the car park is not bounded off. It's not got a fence around it. So
it depends whether it has an impact on the neighbours, doesn't it, with their parking? So Councillor Ramsey was next.
I think it probably will have an impact on the neighbours. It's quite a closely built area because it's replacing one property, and I think it will have an impact on the neighbours. I'm surprised we haven't had any objections from the neighbours, but it looks to me as if he's trying to secure more land than perhaps is his. I don't know, but I think it will have an impact on the neighbours and on the whole of that development. It's like an L-shaped development, and I think it will break that up, and I think it will have a detrimental impact.
Okay, so what proposal is coming out of this? That we object on what grounds? On the possible impact on neighbours, or what do people want to do?
Well, we haven't seen the gates yet, have we? To know how obtrusive they're going to be.
Yeah, okay.
So I'd like to look at it again and make sure that all the neighbours have been consulted and we can see the gates that they're proposing to use.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Alban, please.
If we move no objection subject to neighbours, neighbours should be consulted in any case. So I don't see the issue. If we see no sort of technical problem with this application, neighbours will be consulted and we will ask for them to be consulted. So I would move that we don't object subject to neighbours, our normal condition.
Okay, Councillor Grant Fage and then Councillor Leslie Fage.
If that is the proposal, maybe if Councillor Alban is okay with this, and something that we've done in the past is perhaps just to stress the impact to the neighbours, because this is not just any old no objection subject to neighbours. It really is. We want to make sure that the neighbours have seen this and have had the opportunity to comment on it. So perhaps we can just really stress that quite firmly in our response.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the proposal as it stands with the addition of, thank you, I've got people signalling. Councillor Leslie Fage.
Yes, I was just going to say, rather than put it out to the neighbours for no objection, make sure that every neighbour is aware of it and they have an objection or no objection. Then we can clarify that it has been seen and agreed or disagreed with the neighbours.
I can see what you're trying to do, but I'm not sure that we can do that. That's down to the planners, isn't it? Rather than to the town council. I'm not getting any advice from anybody. So I think what we're saying, we've got the proposal is for no objection subject to neighbours, but with an emphasis on making sure that all neighbours are aware and know what the plan is. So on the basis of that, all those in favour of subject to neighbours with the emphasis. Sorry, can you just show again? I need to count again. Yeah, that's 12, 13 with me, so that's definitely passed. Right, no more planning. I'm moving on to items for consideration. And the item we have here is online meetings and a request to consider that standing committee meetings will not be live streamed in future to YouTube. The Town Council will still record all meetings, but these recordings will be kept on the Zoom account and will not be released to the public. Town Council meetings will continue to be streamed to YouTube for transparency reasons. Comments, please. Councillor Knight.
Thank you. So unfortunately, I do not support this motion. Committee meetings are public meetings, just like today's meetings, and I think transparency is key. It's important that our community can witness the work that we're doing on their behalf. I think it's important that we do everything possible to make all public meetings accessible. And I think YouTube provides a valuable catch-up service for those unable to join a meeting live, perhaps due to work or family commitments. Especially meetings that sometimes occur in the day. For example, personnel meetings often occur during the working day. And as far as I know, the streaming service costs us nothing. So I feel it's an important part of our digital revolution. Of course, YouTube allows members of the public to view any meeting at any point in the future. So it's a useful archive. Standing orders allow any member or observer to record a meeting themselves, but such content may be edited before it's shared on social media. So I think an important role played by the official council archive is it provides the full meeting without any such edits, which I think is also important. And if we consider some of the meetings, some of the committee meetings that CBC hold, for example, the recent development management committee meetings, they are archived online. And I know a number of people have found that to be a very useful resource. So in summary, I think this motion would be a step backwards, so I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Foster.
I wholeheartedly like to second Councillor Knight's proposal. There's no logic in not having committee meetings online when you have council meetings online. It's the same difference. We should certainly be prepared to be completely transparent and use the modern technology. That's my view.
I have to say, I don't like the idea that people are thinking we have to do this to be completely transparent. I think the town council is very transparent in all sorts of other ways. I've got Councillor Pullinger and then Councillor North. Councillor Pullinger.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Councillor Knight summarised very well the issues really that I have with this proposal. A couple of points I'd just like to stress. The first one is actually the proposal itself in its final sentence gives the very good reason why we shouldn't support this proposal, because there is no reason why we shouldn't have the same level of transparency for our committee meetings as we have for our full council meetings. They are equally open to the public, and if we're not dealing with things at council, they are being dealt with on behalf of public at a committee meeting. The second point I would add is if the concern of members might be that they wouldn't want something that they have said in a committee meeting to be available for putting on Facebook or recorded or what have you. As Councillor Knight has said, firstly, the public have a right to record and do what they like with those recordings in any case. And the set point I'd like to make is, if you're going to say something that you're not willing to be in the public domain, then you probably shouldn't be saying it either. So I support everything Councillor Knight, Councillor Foster have said, and think we should not support this proposal.
Councillor North and then Councillor Strawn.
Well, I would just like to ask a question, if I may. I mean, who is making this proposal, and what is the reason for it? I mean, we've heard arguments against it just now, but what are the arguments in favour of it? I mean, what is the reason for putting this idea forward?
I'll explain that logic if I can. So, in part, this is in response to some people's concerns about exactly what the member just described, which is being conscious of what we say in a public arena, and how effective we should be in making sure that if we have to have a different type of conversation, that it goes under exempt items. So it's kind of a little bit overcautious in that sense. So, you know, if we can be conscious of that, then there's no reason why we can't continue to be transparent for subcommittees and full council. That's the reason for the recommendation. So officers are responding to concerns.
Okay.
What concerns about what? Concerns that people might say the wrong thing and regret it, or
being conscious of our language, yes, in the sense it's being recorded, yes.
But also, I think that more meetings there may need to be more exempt items anyway.
Yes, I agree. Yes.
Yeah. Councillor Strawn.
I was going to ask the same question as Councillor North. That it's been answered. I think it's just that we've got to look at what's exempt and what isn't exempt, because there will be certain things that are inappropriate for contractual reasons or personal reasons that should be exempt items. But I agree with the idea of being put forward by Councillor Knight, etc., that we should be as transparent as possible, and therefore I think the meeting should be public where appropriate.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, I think the principle of democracy is that, following on from what the Greeks used to do, so all meet in the market square and all vote. And I think one day, if we continue this way, we may be able to do that. But it's nice to be able to see what the councillors are doing. And it's quite clear that generally people are responding and people are looking back on these YouTubes and mentioning to me and others. And it's nice to get the feedback and to get the support from people.
Okay, so the proposal is to reject what's on the order paper and to live stream committee meetings, standing committees to YouTube. All those in favour, please.
So, sorry, what are we? What's the? Can you repeat that?
It's the proposal you seconded, Councillor Foster.
Oh, right. Okay. So we're voting not to do this.
No, we're voting against what's on the order paper. So the proposal is to live stream to YouTube for standing committee meetings.
Excellent.
Okay.
I'm in favour of that.
Right, can I have a show then of all those in favour, please? That's 11, thank you. All those against? Well, I will put my hand up. So that's 1. So that's carried, that in future we will live stream standing committees to YouTube, and we'll be careful about what has to be on exempt in that case. Crime statistics. Now, I think we need to invite Helen Calvert in. Please.
We do. When Helen's joined us, I'll just do a couple of minute intro.
Okay. Councillor Ramsey.
I just wanted to say, as we've got to be more careful about what goes on as exempt, will the councillors be able to look at the agenda and then ask for it to be exempt, or will that be decided by whoever is setting the agenda?
Well, there are rules for what can be exempt and what can't be, so I think we have to work this out going forward.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And it's some things will not be able to be exempt, but then there is the issue of whether they can be discussed fully. If it's going to be on YouTube forevermore.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Helen, into the meeting. Peter, you're going to introduce this item.
I am, yeah, just very briefly. This is a continuation of what's come up at a couple of meetings, which is that as much as we've been getting the regular crime statistics, it's sometimes difficult to understand the data that's in front of us and to try and gain that kind of added value and insight into what we are actually looking at. So in the spirit of trying to move it forward, Helen and Amanda have been working together to try and present the information in something in a much more insightful way. And I hope it's heading in that direction. Having said that, and there's a big thank you to Helen and Amanda for this, we're very conscious that it still might not be exactly what members would like. So we're keen to listen to this, and I'm sure that we can adapt it even further to make it of even greater value than it currently is. So what I'd like to do is to offer Helen the opportunity of just briefly explaining what she and Amanda have been doing, and then pass to Chair to potentially look at the recommendations and to take advice from others.
Thank you. Helen, then, please.
Good evening, councillors. This evening, I'm presenting the crime statistics report for Biggleswade for the month of August 2020. This report has been created in an alternative format following members' requests at the 25th of August council meeting for a more user-friendly display of the statistics. Members also requested to understand the impact of lockdown on criminal activity in Biggleswade, and so a graph displaying these statistics has also been included in the report. The report requests members' input on the following. So whether the report meets the requests made at the 25th of August council meeting, whether any additional or alternative graphs are required for the 27th of October council meeting, and whether the categorisation of crimes as listed in the appendix is insightful. Any further questions or feedback on the report will be gratefully received, and any suggested alterations will be incorporated into the next crime statistics report. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Helen. Duncan, oh sorry, Councillor Strong, can I ask you if you have any comments, please?
Yes, I think it is a lot more readable and easily understood. And I congratulate Helen and Amanda Cawthorne for having put this together. I still think that some of the other criminal offences may need a little bit of tweaking to get it in more similar crimes. But I think what was useful from the graph was the statistical comparisons year on year, but in particular month on month, because if one looks at the June to August figures, other criminal offences are going up exponentially. In other cases, it'd be referred to as the R rate. They're going up, and I wonder why that is. And I think we possibly will need a bit more of a breakdown on that and to keep an eye on that, because one wonders whether what is causing this upward trend. Other ones are going to fluctuate inevitably, but this over a 3-month period is the upward trend. And therefore, I think we just need to be conscious of it. And in October, we will see what's happened in September to see whether this is an ongoing issue. But I do think that possibly we could look at other criminal offences generally and just see whether they're all in the right place, because there's some that are different natures of crime, such as possession of offensive weapons, and others are more of a harassment type offence. So perhaps that could just be looked at and considered. And if I can be of any help there, please ask me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pullinger.
Thank you. So yeah, I'd like to echo Councillor Strawn's comments, thanking and commending Helen for her work on this, and again thanking Amanda Cawthorne for the support with the data. I think they are much more insightful than everything we've seen previously, and there's nothing specifically in the way that the reports are laid out that I would particularly suggest to change at this point. I think after a few months of seeing these, we may obviously identify some improvements. I would echo Councillor Strawn's comments around some of the categorisation. There's a few pieces that I've picked up as well, which I think could probably be tweaked. For example, there's threats to kill and wounding, which were in the other, I think, rather than the violent crimes. And so there's a little bit of tweaking there, but nothing really to be overly concerned about. I think just I'll feed some of those things back offline rather than going through them all in the meeting. But yeah, really well. And I think if Councillor Strawn hasn't already done so, I think I would move that we note the report, and in particular our thanks to Helen for preparing it and for Amanda Cawthorne for supporting with the data.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Grant-Fage.
Yeah, though I think I agree. I think this is a lot better. One small piece of feedback, which I can email on as well, is just it would be maybe useful if we could include the number of crimes that the bar graph, that the bar chart is showing, only because some of the bar charts are relatively small, and so it's quite hard to tell. You know, if we've got 50 on the scale, how many crimes we're looking at. Otherwise, I think this is really good. The second thing I would observe is less about the layout, but more about what this kind of analysis can show us. And I think one of the most disturbing things for me is actually that we've seen an increase in thefts and attempted thefts year on year, and this despite the shops having been closed for a good 2.5-3 months of this year. Very, very concerning. Town Centre Management Committee is meeting on October the 6th. We have the Crime Working Group, which has been doing some work on CCTV. I'm not sure that we're going to be in a position to provide a formal recommendation about what we can do around these sort of thefts, particularly in the town centre. But I think it is just a very clear message to councillors and to officers that this is still a really serious problem, and it's down to us to think about what we can do as a town council to support it. And certainly in my position as chairman of TCM, we'll be doing that through the Crime Working Group and through that committee as well.
Thank you. Councillor Knight.
Thank you. I'd just like to express my thanks for the excellent report. Really appreciate that. So I'm sort of wondering how we make this actionable. The trends are clear. They're going to become clearer over time. I guess there's probably no way to do this with the data that we receive at the moment. But I wonder if in the future it would be possible to break it down by area. Although Biggleswade's not a large town, it would be helpful, I think, to understand whether there are particular geographic parts of the town where there are more issues than others. And I don't know if there's a way to do that without confidentiality issues, because obviously you don't want to report individual streets perhaps. But I wonder if that's a follow-up discussion that maybe the Crime Working Group can have with their sort of police liaison.
Thank you. Are any other comments?
Okay, yes.
Councillor Brown, please, and then Councillor Ramsey, and then the clerk.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's much better than previous years. Can I just pick up on Councillor Farge's point about having the numbers at the top of each bar? That would be helpful. But it also, if we look at theft, or attempted theft, it would be interesting to know if the figures can be produced, and this is a big ask. The number of perpetrators, for example, last year, I think there was over 250
if you have the statistics that these 250 were committed by 250 different people, then there's 250 perpetrators. But moving on to this year, there's over 290. If it's committed by 10 people, it gives a different context to the figures. Now, you may not have that information, but it would be nice to know if there's the same perpetrator is responsible, then the number of offences they're involved in would be useful. Gives it more context.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I think we understand what you're saying. It might need closer liaison with the police on that one. Councillor Ramsey.
In the past, the police have been able to separate the shoplifting, etc., that's going on up on the trading estate on the London Road, the retail park, and in the town centre. So they may be able to do that again. I understand that the police have tried several times to talk to the shopkeepers on the retail park about where their tills are placed inside the store and shoplifting and detection. So I don't know whether the stores have been joining in any scheme or not. My concern is for the local stores in the market square and for the members of staff in those stores. I have been in stores when shoplifting is taking place, more than one shop, and one of them said it's the same lot that was in yesterday, but I'm not going to stop them because I'll get beaten up and all the rest of it, and we've been told not to touch them. We've just got to let them do it. And then I was in another shop a few days later, and she said about we've just had shoplifters in, and I said, do you know who they are? And she said, everybody knows who they are, but we can't touch them, and we've been told not to do that because we are more worthwhile, or we are worth more than the stock. So it seems to me that there's a certain group of shoplifting going on in Biggleswade where they know they're not going to get apprehended. They know that they can do as they like and go in and out of shops, that the staff have been told not to try and stop them. So is there going to be, if you're going to have this crime meeting, is there going to be any way that these shops can raise the alarm? Is there, I believe there used to be in force a system where the shopkeepers could tell each other's shops, the stores, when these people were around and about. But it seems to me to have our staff, our local people under threat because they're on the tills and they can't apprehend any shopkeepers, and to have shoplifters going around different stores knowing full well they can come back every day if they like and nothing's going to happen. So I would like to have the comments of those and ask if this can please be taken forward to your police meeting.
Okay, I've got Councillor Strawn, then Councillor Fage.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Does Councillor Ramsey know whether the stores are actually reporting these thefts to the police? I appreciate they might not be able to do so at the precise moment for obvious reasons, but are they getting reported to the police, and are the police then reacting? If get some feedback we can put into the police, that might be helpful.
One of the stores has got its own CCTV, and they were pointing it at the areas where most of the shoplifting took place. And I believe it was said that the pictures weren't satisfactory. And if you bear in mind that they pull their hoods up, I suppose nobody can see very much. But I know one of them has got CCTV and they were trying to take it further. Thank you.
Councillor Fage.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is all useful, but I think when the crime working group reports back, there will be time for a deeper conversation through the management committee. So if Councillor Ramsey wants to email me, perhaps copy Councillor Strawn and Councillor Knight as Deputy Chairman of TCM, we can figure out how we well, I'm meeting with the Town Clerk on Friday to put together the agenda for TCM. So if we're able to get that information by then, we can factor that in. Thanks.
Thank you. The clerk, please.
Well, I just wanted to say that I think this is a really good piece of work, firstly. Secondly, this is really helpful organisational intelligence. So we can play our part here, and it should inform our local response. I think there's, in particular, things that we can do around drug abuse, graffiti, and alcohol abuse, and we've already begun to do that. So we can do practical things to make a difference at our level. And an example of that was at the Drove Road Cemetery a matter of a couple of weeks ago, where we can actually be conscious about when the cemeteries are opening. We can be conscious about realizing where most of the drug taking is taking place, and we can seal off those areas which they're using at the moment. So what I wanted to say was, this is really valuable, but we want to make this practical and usable and make a difference to our community. And I think that we can. So thank you.
Okay, any other comments from anybody? Well, thank you very much, Helen, for joining the meeting. And I can see that Amanda Cawthorne is among the members of the public. So thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Helen, for the work that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, councillors. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Right. I'm going on to items for information. And we've got a footpath item, and I think that Councillor Foster has something to inform us about this, please. Councillor Mark Foster.
Okay, apologies. Right, remember, just as a note to this, I was seeking to clarify. I'm not sure whether members have the map in front of them. I was just seeking to clarify what was actually being surfaced. Having looked at the map, section 3, which is the green arrow sort of towards the bottom, middle bottom of the map, seems to indicate that the section 3 goes halfway along the section around the built up area. I don't know whether members can actually see where I'm referring to. But it seems to be a bit inconsistent as to why that would be. There doesn't seem to be any reason why it would stop where it does. There is no road there that it joins up to. So the logical thing there would be that it either goes further east to the next blue dotted line, if that makes sense on the map, or it goes elsewhere. I spoke to Chris, I think his name is Chris Nichol at Central Beds, to see sort of get some clarification of actually where the resurfacing work was going to be done. Now, his answer was that actually it doesn't go as far as that. So it's that the arrow that the green arrow that's marked on there is inaccurate. And having checked on the Central Beds website in terms of the consultation, it seems to indicate, well, it's exactly the same map. So we have the same map that is on the Central Beds website, but the actual resurfacing work will not actually go as far east as is indicated on this map. If I could, without being too vague about it, I guess if you were to look on the map around about a centimetre to the left is where it joins up with Compton Mead. That is where the actual resurfacing work is actually is part of the scope of works. Now, clearly, that doesn't make it makes sense in the short term. And part of the reason I think the resurfacing work has been done in this way is it joins up with Edward Peak. So the view is that pupils from Edward Peak Middle School will go along footpath 30 and 33 and 36 and will access the Kings Reach development via this route in Compton Mead. That's actually probably what happens at the moment, but they might also follow a route a little bit further to the east. So the issue here really is that the map that we have is inaccurate, but also from the public point of view, the public also has this map on as part of the consultation. So I think we just need to be making sure that we write to Central Beds as a town council. We write to Central Beds and try and get some clarification of this. I've obviously expressed my views as Central Beds councillor about what we need to do here, but the main issue here is it's not as far as it is. But subsequently, I think we also need to be encouraging the resurfacing work for the whole of effectively that footpath 33 right the way up to Baden Powell Way. But that will be a future thing once the development is completed within the next phase, I think.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pullinger. Sorry,
thank you. I just wanted to note that I take on board everything Councillor Foster says, but to be clear, this is showing where the closures are. It's not showing where the actual resurfacing is taking place in itself. I think it is something we probably should do. Indeed, as a town council, is clarify which areas are actually being resurfaced. But what we're actually being asked to consider or to note here is the areas that are being closed and when, and the routes that those diversions will take, not actually to consider the actual resurfacing works themselves. Although I do think we should follow up with the relevant officers to understand exactly what is being done in terms of that work.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Foster again.
If I might come back on that, yeah, Councillor Pullinger, you're right. As I mentioned, I'm well aware that the information here is inaccurate, and hence the reason for clarifying it with the officer, and the scope of works does not indicate what is said here. So I appreciate that they're saying that the closure is within that section, and that's where we've got the grey area that needs clarifying. So thank you for that, but I appreciate what you're saying.
Okay, so we want to write to clarify what's being surfaced. Does council want to add to that a request for the rest of that footpath to be surfaced at an appropriate time? Should we do that as well? I'm getting nods. Okay, so we will clarify exactly what's being surfaced and ask that the remainder be surfaced when it's appropriate.
Madam Mayor.
Sorry, yes, Councillor Fage.
Sorry, it would be good if it could be resurfaced up to the Walker's Mead, up to where it says D on the map, because that is the natural entrance from King's Reach for the pupils to meet that muddy path that goes to Edward Peak. The bit from D to Baden Powell, I agree, can be done within due course with finance and everything else, but taking it right up to D is essential. There is no gap before that footpath section 2 and D. There is no gap in the fence there for the pupils to come onto that path.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mark Foster again.
Sorry. What I should have mentioned at this point, what I also clarified with the officer at Central Beds is how wide the pathway is likely to be. Clearly quite narrow at the moment, and I was seeking to get some clarification about whether it would meet the government guidelines, and the government guidelines seem to indicate 2 meters, 2.5 meters. So my clarification was that section 3 or section 2 series on the scope of works will be 2 meters, I think it is, but most of the other sections are going to be 2.5 meters. So either way will be within the guidelines. So and also will be surfaced with asphalt, so it's not it's a decent surface as opposed to some of the other surfaces that we've seen within other developments. So it's I've got it here in front of me. Just bear with me a second. So it's effectively a tarmac surface.
Okay, thank you. I'm not getting any other signals to speak. I think we know what we need. We need to ask Central Beds about. So I'm moving on the agenda, and it's another public open session, this time for members of the public to speak about anything that's town council business, not just what's on the agenda. So do I have any members of the public who wish to speak? Yes, Biggleswade Community Safety, I think that's Amanda Cawthorne.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Just to follow up a bit more on the crime statistics, we can actually break it out into wards. They actually put it into crime beats. So we could go down to levels of Ivor, etc. And maybe what we could do for next time is maybe break shoplifting out so you can actually see the trends going across the different wards. One other thing I would like to mention is something that maybe Councillor Farage could bring up for the town centre management team. Our group worked last year very closely with the police, along with Simon Newton from the Town Council, on an operation called Operation Woking that was actually all over Christmas period. And we actually got loads of different material that could actually be reshared with local businesses, how to report a crime, because we know for a fact that they're not bothering to report everything. Those figures are very low to what we are aware of elsewhere. And also on the Operation Woking, there was like guidance of how they can actually position themselves in the shop to actually deter, do maybe like a welcome greet for the bigger organisations. I know it's a bit more challenging for smaller businesses, but things like that can go constantly reiterating to them. Also, Sainsbury's actually falls under another borough now. It doesn't actually come under Biggleswade's crime statistics. So if you want them included, we could actually maybe just put them, but under a little subheading, so, or a different ward if you want it. So you could identify maybe Bell's Lane or whatever, so you could see very clearly that that's the Sainsbury's area.
Thank you. I understand that because it's in Norville Parish, isn't it?
Yeah.
It might be interesting to see if Sainsbury's has the same problems as shops in the town centre, particularly the other major supermarkets. Thank you very much for that, Amanda.
Okay.
I now have Councillor Whitaker would like to speak, please.
Hello, good evening. I was talking to some residents over the weekend over in the Brunel Drive area of Biggleswade, and they were raising concerns around the state of the play park that I believe is run by the town council in that area. I can very happy to send some photos across. I would say it's not appalling, but it does need a little bit of TLC. So the grass is nicely been mown, but actually around the seating area it would be quite hard to sit down without getting a few prickles in the wrong place. The surface underneath the play equipment, which looks actually really quite new, has got weeds sticking through it all over the place, so it looks like it needs a bit of love if we don't want that surface to become ruined and have to be replaced sooner rather than later. Some of the equipment looked like it could possibly do with being replaced. So if it's possible for somebody or for the town council to consider having a bit of a look at that particular play area, it is very well used by the local community and by those people living in that area. I think they will very much appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Whitaker. I'm sure we can look at that one. Do any other members of the public wish to speak, please? I'm getting no more indications. So we do have some exempt items. So we're moving the resolution that it's advisable in the public interest that the public and press are excluded. So if I can ask colleagues now to join a second meeting for the exempt items in a moment or two. Thank you very much to everybody for tonight's meeting. Good night.